Hello. Hey, how's everyone doing? Jeez, what an amazing talk from the Token Studio team. I'm always so excited to hear new cool things coming, what they're working on, and what is going on. Design Systems is just growing and blowing up every day. How exciting. So our next talk will be with Alex, who is a lead designer at Agoda. And this is actually Alex's second time talking on Into Design System conference. So let's welcome him on.
Thank you very much. See if you guys can hear me and see me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Super exciting. Been waiting for a long time to do this, so can't wait to get started.
Yeah, awesome. So while we were chatting last week, was it? And getting to know each other, actually realized that we had quite a lot in common. And that was that we both went from graphic design to product design and then into design systems. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to share how you move from graphic design into design systems.
Yeah, wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I always thought I would do graphic design because I felt like it's too many variables and things going on with web design or app design. I kind of ended up in this random job in Bangkok. So I'm from Sweden originally, but then my friend moved to Bangkok to work here, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to come and work with us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that was in a call center. But then I started to like sketch out like different layouts for the sort of internal tool that we were using every day. And someone just happened to see that, and they're like, "Hey, we need someone who can do that in our team. Like, can you join?" And then suddenly I was in this product team, and I had to do like everything, like graphic design, like icons, product manuals, and a little bit of UI as well. And lucky for me, I guess, my manager got promoted to like department head. So they were like, "Hey, we need a team leader. Can you head up the product team here?" I was like, "Sure." And I don't know, I was 20 years old. Like I would never have given myself that opportunity if I was him, but I'm very grateful because that kind of got me to learn all of the things about product and design the hard way, I guess. And yeah, since then, I've kind of enjoyed designing and leading products. And design system, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that comes with different processes and working with different stakeholders and managing, different scenarios and how you take on different products and projects as well. So today, Alex will be sharing with us how they prioritize work at Agoda through a scoring system and managing expectations in their team. So take us away, Alex.
All right, let's see. Let me share my screen. See how that goes. All right, hopefully you can all see the screen now. Works fine? Okay, cool. Yes, so yes, I'm Alex. As you said, thank you for having me today. I'll be talking about how we prioritize things that is coming into our design system, and also a bit on how we manage expectations and such with all our stakeholders. So a little bit of context first before I start. I work for Agoda. Agoda is one of the leading online travel agencies in Asia and in the world. And we help people to book hotels, flights, activities, and pretty much everything you need for your trip. And our design system at Agoda, we support over 60 different product teams and 1,600 and more engineers and designers. And we launch about 100 new A/B tests in our products every single week. And we always have more than 1,000 running at any given time. So that's a lot of things for us to try and keep up with and try to support as a team. And Design Systems has been around for a while at Agoda. It started in 2018 by some of our web developers. And after that, we started to build our first dedicated design system with both designers and engineers in a team. And that was for our iOS and Android app. And these were completely separate systems. And then the second generation started in 2021 as we tried to refresh our whole app, essentially. And around the same time, our web developers were rebuilding the tech stack on their system. And this happened to also be the time when I joined to lead the design systems design division. So with two new systems in progress, we quickly realized that it made no sense to design and develop both separately. And so we started to unify the design language to the design tokens and align components as much as possible and wherever it made sense. So this is ADS, Agoda Design System. And we have a centralized cross-functional team, and we run like this team like any other product team, essentially. And we have product manager, we have engineers on all platforms, QA, design operations, accessibility, and of course, a bunch of designers in my team. And looking back when I joined, one of the biggest challenges that we had was probably to get buy-in and to explain to our leadership team what a design system actually is. But as ADS started to take shape, more and more product teams were adopting the system. And this is when things got challenging for us, because we're in general not this super process and documentation heavy company. So at this point, we kind of struggled to keep up with things. And this is kind of how my Slack looked like during Q3 last year. We found ourselves in this endless stream of questions, requests, issues, and like people just didn't quite understand what we were doing as a team. And we had to define our priorities in very long and unproductive debates sometimes. So we're under a lot of pressure, and it felt like all we really did was to put out fires. And the kind of trust and momentum that we had worked so hard to build up was now really turning against us. And as a team, we had originally promised to bring more efficiency and quality to all of the product teams, but instead now they were becoming blocked by us because we couldn't keep up. So it had reached a point where something drastic had to be done. So myself, my PM, and one of our dev leads started to work on identifying some of these root causes and then work our way back to a solution. So essentially, we found ourselves struggling to prioritize the overwhelming amount of work that was coming our way. And we oftentimes faced conflicting priorities depending on which team we talked to. And we didn't always have a good answer why we prioritized A versus B and so on. So our first goal was to figure out how to prioritize things better. And as our team had grown to more than 20 people in ADS, we found it harder and harder to coordinate with the team. So this led to misalignments, and sometimes we dropped the ball on requests, which led to even more frustrations. So we had to keep track and coordinate our work much better. And the expectations from our consumers were not always aligned with reality. We had not really done a good enough job to communicate the scope of our work and why we're building a system and why that's essentially much slower than building your usual feature in a velocity team. And people were just not aware of how many other teams that we were trying to support all of the time. So we had to manage our expectations much better. And finally, everyone really struggled to find the right information, get the latest status, and understand what was going on. So we had to become much more transparent with our work in order to build back that trust. So today, I'm going to share our new process and the rituals that we have for dealing with requests, and also how we define a new framework to prioritize them. And of course, I'll share the learnings that we had along the way and some of the resources if this is something that you want to try out with your team. All right, so this is how our new request journey looks like in ADS. And we use Jira to manage our tasks, but of course you could use any other similar tool if you want, but the examples will probably be mostly from Jira. And this process is pretty straightforward. It starts with a new request coming in, we then prioritize it, groom it, start to work on it, and when we launch, we're done. So nothing too crazy about that, but let's dive in a little bit deeper to each part of this journey to understand more. So let's start with new requests. So we have a dedicated Jira board where we collect all of our requests, but nothing else that we're doing. And in this board, the requests are basically like grouped by status, and then we sort them by priority. So you have the highest priority requests at the very top of the board and the lowest in the bottom. And you can also see the different types of requests. That's those little icons on the left. And you can see how many requests we have in total. And if you want to filter on things, you can, of course, filter on the platform or implementation or the status. And the types of requests that we support are features, visual assets, tokens, and tooling. And what I mean with features is essentially new components, updates or improvements to components, patterns, templates, like all of those kind of things. So to submit the request, anyone in the company who has access to Jira can basically go into our board and submit the request there. And depending on the type of request, we have actually customized like these fields so we can get the specific information we want depending on the request type. So for example, if we're having a feature request, then we might ask for a problem statement, proposed solution, and so on. And in addition to this, we also prepared Figma templates that designers can use to complete these requests. And these templates cover design specs, use cases, and any other essential information that helps us to fully understand what they need. And this might actually seem like a lot to ask for, but it really ensures that we only get the requests that people really, really, really want. And that's why we kind of added like a little bit of intentional friction here to reduce the numbers essentially. But of course, we still have plenty of other forums for feedback, ideas, bug reports, and everything else, which is much easier to communicate with us. So for example, we have individual Slack channels for every single component in the system, every single tool that we build, every token type. So there's probably like a good 100 different channels. And in those channels, we can all have very focused discussions and ideas, inspiration, and so on, but without the commitment that we're going to do something about it right now. So anyhow, that's how we receive the new requests. But now let's look at how we prioritize them. So since we have a pretty big design systems team, it wouldn't really make sense for all of us to be involved in every kind of admin work that we do. So instead, what we have done is we have created a smaller, what we call like an on-call squad. And that squad rotates the members every single week, but it always has at least one designer, a few engineers, and a QA. And this squad handles all the incoming questions, requests, bug reports, and any other support work that we need to do. And this really gives the rest of the team much more time to focus on their work so we can actually get things done. And every Friday, this squad will meet to review all of the new requests that have come in that week. So this week, for example, we have Fa, we have Michael, and Ploy in the squad. And they will check if the requests have all the information we need, if it's even a good fit for our system, and if it is, what would be the priority. And of course, if we don't think that the request has all the information or we don't think it's good enough, we can always send it back to the requester so they have a chance to improve it, and then we'll review it again the week after. And next up, I'll show you how we prioritize those requests. And we try to do that in the most unbiased and transparent way, and making sure that we're always aligning the requests with what our business needs the most. So we are essentially scoring each request based on these 4 criteria. So number 1, we have product area. So that means, is the request actually solving a need from a very business critical product, project, or team? And 2, reusability, meaning can the solution be used across many platforms, features, and teams? And number 3, alternative solutions. Is this something that we maybe already have in the system that they could use instead so that we can unblock them right away? And finally, we look at the effort to build and implement the thing that they want. And what we tend to do here is to favor low-hanging fruits, because even the smallest blockers can really block our consumers from delivering on their feature or project. So we rather work on 10 tiny fixes to unblock 10 different teams than focusing in on just one big change. And each of these criterion is rated from high all the way down to 1 fix. And for each, we'll give them a score. And then it's the sum of these 4 different scores that ends up being the final score for the request. And as you can see here, we're actually giving different scores from the different criteria. And that's intentional, because that actually helps us to weigh the different importance from one criteria to the other. So for example, even if we do like low-hanging fruits, as I said, reusability for us as a design systems team is still much more important. And that's why that score gets 15 points if it scores as high, when effort and alternative solution will only get 10. Okay, so to understand how this works, I will go through an example, and let's just say that we have already built a date picker component before. But now one of the teams want to add the ability to also pick a year that is very far in the future or the past. So starting off with the product area, let's say that we have an upcoming product launch that is very important for the company. Then we'll give that request the highest score. And next up is reusability. And this one is not really as straightforward, and it would be really hard for everyone in our team to assess this in a fair and similar way without any more information. So for reusability, basically what we did is took it one step further and defined a couple of sub-criteria to basically be on board with what reusability means for us as a design systems team. So let's go back to the example of the year selector again. First off, we would be looking at platforms and funnels. And this is something that we could be using on all the platforms. And it would also be relevant both if you search for a hotel or a flight or activity. And it could even be useful for things like selecting date of birth or maybe passport expiry date when you make the booking. So this would definitely score as high. And next up, we would be looking at the end user impact. So do we believe that all users who use Agoda would benefit from this change or not? Maybe no one would benefit from it. Maybe it's a request coming in from a team that works on an internal tool. So in this case, we think that the majority of the users would probably benefit from this improved UX. So we'd score this as a medium. And then similarly, we also want to assess how many of our product teams that could benefit from this. And in this case, we already have seen documented use cases from a couple of different teams and products. So we'd also score this as a medium. And from what we've learned in the last 2 years, I think the more complex a component is, the bigger the needs usually are from the different teams to test it out and tweak it and keep changing it. And that's not really something that we want to do as a design systems team. We really want to keep things like stable. So this one would probably score as a low. So now if we summarize all of these and we take the average, we'll get the medium score for reusability. So coming back to the main 4 criteria, we always check if there are other alternative solutions out there to solve the same problem. And if there is, what would the UX impact be if we didn't solve this problem? So let's say, for example, that there is there's no other solutions out there, for example, and it completely will block the UX if they don't get this request, then we'll score this as a high. If it's a matter of preference and we already have something that will be just as good for the UX, we'll score it as a low. But this one is something that we think we could make use of in a couple of different scenarios. And maybe in other scenarios, we would just use a drop-down or an input field to provide the year. But we'll solve this as a medium because it does for sure solve a few of those use cases. And then finally, we want to look at how easy it is to implement. And we already know today that date pickers are some of the most complex components that we have. It's been a bit of a nightmare for us, to be honest. We also have different UX for all our different implementations here to try and align with different standards. And essentially, it would require a very significant amount of work for us to do. Another added challenge here is that we already have a date picker. And if we're going to add a new feature or change it, that probably means that we're going to have to run an A/B test to make sure that it doesn't impact any of our business metrics. And that means that it might fail, and we might have to redesign and rebuild it again and again until we can take that experiment. So for us, the score would be a low. So there we have it. If we sum up the scores, we'll get a total score of 30. And the max score in our framework is essentially 50, and the lowest score is 0. So 30 falls in the medium priority buckets. And that for us means that we're unlikely to be able to work on this in the near future because we have plenty of requests that are scoring higher right now. So we might ask the team who requested it to contribute to this change if it's something they really need right now. So that's the framework. And this is something that is available for all our coworkers to read and give feedback on in our internal knowledge hub. And before I move on, I think it's really important to say that this framework might be really completely over-engineered for some of you out there. But I do really think that it's a good base to start thinking of how you make decisions and how you socialize those decisions with all of your stakeholders. And it can always be tweaked and dumbed down or changed to whatever your needs are in your team. So I'll share a link to this at the end of the talk as well. And then you can see the entire framework, which has a lot more details than what I show you here. Okay, so now that we have prioritized this, the next step is to groom the request. And every other week, we meet and groom all of these requests together as one team with both designers and developers. And what we do then is we prepare tickets for each individual implementation and design. And those tickets, we store them in different boards for each of the Scrum team. And then we essentially take all of them and link them back to the request ticket. So when we do that, it just makes it very clear for everyone what is being done on the request, which order we do it in, who is doing it. And especially since we do sometimes get contributions, it's pretty cool that we can link different tickets from different boards, including other teams that are not design systems. So now that the tickets are prepared, each of the Scrum team can go back to their own sprint rituals that they already have and groom those tickets in detail. Okay, so once we start designing and developing something on this request, we will change the status of the request to in progress. And from there on, any of our stakeholders can simply go into the request and they can see the status of all of those linked tickets individually. And for any additional status updates or changes that happen, maybe the scope changed or something else, we try to use the Jira comments on the requests so that everyone can stay up to date and so that we have like a full log of what has happened from start to finish. And finally, once everything is released, we will mark this request as done and it will be removed from our board. So to keep our stakeholders in the loop throughout this journey, we were initially relying on the notification system in Jira. So the requester will then get an email whenever the status, priority, or anything else has changed, even when there are new comments on the tickets. And anyone else in the company who is also interested in a request, they can add themselves as a watcher, and they will also receive all of this communication. So you can really leverage the system to automate a lot of these tasks, which is really great and more consistent than relying on us to do it. But one thing that we have learned is that people are generally very busy and they don't always notice these emails. So you could say that that's their responsibility, but to be honest, what we learned is that that was a big pain point for a lot of different people. So in addition to the automated emails, we're also announcing all of the changes we do in our Slack channel where everyone can see it. So in this example to the right, one of my designers, Parn, has just announced the latest improvements to our bottom sheet component. But not only that, she even recorded a quick Figma tutorial on how to use this new feature in Figma. And I think that's so clever because you're really going the extra mile for your coworkers. And that's something that they usually really, really appreciate. And in this other example, you can see how one of our new developers, Bank, is sending out a summary of the request that we just prioritized. So again, it takes a little bit of extra time, but it's totally worth it. And I would say one additional benefit of communicating this in this way and tagging everyone that has been sending these requests is that they can also see how many other requests and things that we are working on at the same time. So they grow their understanding in the scope of our work. Okay, so just to summarize from the start to the end, anyone can submit the request to us by using the Jira board and the Figma templates. And then we'll review all of the new requests in our weekly intake review meeting with that on-call squad that I mentioned. And we'll then groom them together with both designers and developers across all the different platforms and try to scope out the work in different tickets across our different Scrum boards. And then each of our teams will go to our own grooming sessions and groom those tickets in detail. And once we start working on the request, we just follow the usual sprint rituals. And then when it's done, we announce the change to the rest of the org. And throughout this journey, the requester will get plenty of updates, both from Jira, from our email, and from Slack as well. So just trying to like over communicate with them and make sure that they're always in the loop. Okay, so before I wrap up, I want to share some of the things we learned and some tips on how you can get started if you want to try this out. So we have seen a lot of benefits by introducing this process. And in my team, I used to be the one who ran all of the meeting rituals as a design lead. But now that we have a very clear process, even the most junior members of my team have the confidence to lead these meetings without my help. So that really means that I can focus more of my time on strategical questions, and my designers can grow their skills by running all of these meetings. So it's really such a big win-win. And it also removes many of the time-consuming debates that we used to have, because back then it was very stressful for our team, because they were expected to kind of remember all of the different rationales and why we decided to this and that. And that's really impossible, to be honest, because we make so many decisions every day. But now we can pinpoint the requirements directly. We can see where in this process something went wrong. And we can also have a look and see if we should prioritize things differently and change that. And instead of debating about individual requests, we can now have much better discussions around the framework itself. So for example, when we prioritize things, maybe there are more things that we should consider that we just haven't. Or maybe we are over-indexing on some of the scores and we should change them. And maybe the business has changed priorities too, so we also need to adjust to that. So this is really great because unlike individual requests, by having this framework, we can always come back and tweak and improve it over time. And we have already made a ton of changes since we launched it last year. And next, I wanted to talk about some of the bigger topics that we face as a design system and explain a little bit on where we think that this process has helped us to solve those and where they haven't solved it. So first off, one of the things that it has really helped is to build a better understanding with all our stakeholders on what design systems do and why our work is so important. And remember, we separate all of the requests from everything else we do. So we have other boards where we store all the day-to-day, like maintenance, under the hood stuff, and keep the request board clean with just requests. And the reason why this is important is because the requests, they clearly show what the demand is of your system from the rest of the company, not from us. So that's a much stronger selling point when you need buy-in from your leadership than just telling them that, hey, like we think we should do this because of X, Y, Z. Now we can point and say, hey, we have 23 teams that are currently waiting for us to build all of these 50 different things. And then, they will need to act in one way or another. And other teams now also understand why we work on the things we do, which has led to clearer expectations. And each quarter, our team run a survey with all of our product teams. And we can clearly see in that survey that our scores about communication and transparency have increased since we launched this process. In our company, our product teams have very high autonomy to experiment and to test anything they think can drive value for our company. And with a design system, that is a lot harder to do. So we have to ask ourselves, are we mainly trying to drive better design or enable teams to ship faster? And do we as a company want to drive more consistency or maybe not? So there are, of course, trade-offs to both. And I don't think I have a super strong opinion, and we're probably somewhere in between. But what we're doing right now is to provide as many insights as possible to our leadership team so that we can decide together with them how we want to utilize the system as a company strategically. And this request board has also helped us to give a lot of different insights to help us have those conversations. And we can also clearly see what the biggest gaps are in the system and how much more work there is still to do. And that has helped us to remind our leadership team that the design system is really not a project that will be done anytime soon, but it's really like an evolving system that will adapt to the needs of the org. And the next big topic is bandwidth and contributions. So after launching our request board for about 3 quarters now, it's pretty clear that we are not able to keep up with all of the demands. Let's be honest. We receive on average 5 times more requests than we're able to solve. And we're initially hoping to see more contributions now that the process and the requirements are more clear. But in reality, we probably do 99% of the work ourselves. And when we have contributions, we still need to spend a lot of time supporting and fixing issues. So while contributions can be really good to build a better understanding of the system and just to socialize the system amongst the different teams in the company, it's not really a time saver, or it hasn't been for us at least. So we still struggle to keep up with that demand, and the numbers really speak for themselves. So now that we have those numbers, black and white, what we can do is we can go back to our leadership team and we can talk to them and ask them, do you want to add more headcount to our team? Or do you want to make contributions work better? And if so, how do you think we can do that? And how do we allocate resources from other teams to spend more time on this? Or actually, maybe it's okay. Maybe, as a design systems team, we should only be focusing on the top 20% of the requests we get. So again, I don't have a strong opinion on this, but it's really interesting when we sit down with our directors in design, product, and IT and have these discussions. And somehow, interestingly enough, they have started to become the advocates for our design system. So we don't really have to do all of that work anymore alone. And finally, as an agile company, we usually don't work on timelines that are longer than 1 or 2 sprints. However, since almost all our product teams at this point are relying on our work to get their things done, it can be really, really frustrating to not get any clear answers from us on when they can get the thing that they want. And this is really something that we have to figure out. And to be honest, I still don't have the answers to this. So something we're talking about in our team, something that we haven't figured out with this process. So let's see. Maybe it's a topic for another talk. Okay, so now you know a little bit more about what this process can solve and what it probably won't solve. So if any of these problems that we are facing are similar to your team, and if you would be interested to try any of these things, here are some tips that you can do to get started. So first, define what your prioritization framework should look like. So yesterday, for example, you learned everything you need to know about stakeholders from Marianne. So make sure to involve them in this process, because you want to build a shared understanding of the trade-offs that you are willing to sacrifice and the priorities that you want to make as a company, not just as a design team. And this will make the rest of your journey so much smoother. And next, centralize all of the requests in one place so you can get a complete overview of the demand of the design system. And this will help making a case to grow and invest more into your team. And after that, create routines to ensure that you'll move things forward in an efficient manner. And try to standardize your workflows as much as possible. This will make it so much easier to keep track of things. And always plan for how you're going to communicate with your stakeholder along the entire journey. And finally, learn as you go and improve along the way. Track any interesting data points that you have and use them as ammunition to get what you need for your team. And then you keep iterating. So those are 4 steps that you can take to get started. And I just really wanted to say that I'm so blessed to have such an amazing team. They have started to embrace change because they know that the faster that we can learn and change things for the better, the more successful we can be together. And we always have each other's back. And even right now, even if it's close to midnight here in Bangkok, I know that they're having a big watch party online to support me. So a big shout out to all of you. I love you. And all of you have helped to make this possible. So finally, if you're interested in this, you can scan this QR code now But of course, we'll also share this resource on the Miro board and everywhere that we share resources in this conference. And in this QR code, you'll find the complete framework. You'll find the request templates that we have prepared for you in Figma. We have some guidelines on how we communicate in which tools. And we also have laid out all our sprint rituals so you can see how we run them and in which order to make this process work. And you can also find some of my previous talks and articles, and also some things that I find interesting that other people have written. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So thanks for listening, and I hope that some of you find it useful.
Wow, that was amazing. Jeez, thank you so much for sharing that. The emojis are popping off in the chat. Wow. All the hearts, thumbs up, love that you're getting. That's amazing. Thank you so much. It's so intuitive and easy to understand. Each step was so well thought out. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was great. Let me check on the Miro board. You got quite a lot of questions that have come in.
Oh boy.
Yeah. No, there's good ones. There's good ones. So what if you do not have the capacity to respond to the need on time? For example, the product team has a strict deadline.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're struggling with still today. I mean, we have more than 20 people in our team, and that's still the big struggle. To be honest, like at least until we have a better idea on this, what we do is we keep communicating that we actually cannot promise any deadlines. Like that's just the hard truth right now. So if you really need something and if you have a launch, please try to estimate the effort of building that thing just like you would do with any other change in your team, and try to contribute. And you know, we need to be pragmatic. Worst case scenario, if that's no time for that, you know, go and build it yourself, and we'll look at it later and consolidate. So we actually have this newly started design committee with our director and a few different people, where people can come for advice and say, hey, is this something we should contribute? Should we wait for you to do it? Or can I go ahead and do it myself? And then our director will basically be the decision maker. So that removes all of the sort of strain from our team versus the product team. We'll have the director in between that make the decision, which is kind of really nice. But yeah, I don't have any good answers to that. But just make sure to set the expectations if you don't have the capacity. That's the most important thing, and do it as early as you can.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. I guess each team is different and you need to work with what you have.
Yeah.
So next question is, what parts of this is the most important to implement for a small team where you don't have a dedicated design team?
Yeah, I would say again, the coming back to what we're here to solve. I mean, at least for my team, our mission is to design things better and build it faster. So, you know, how can we help the organization to do that? And probably by being quite ruthless in the priorities. So again, I would sit down with whoever is the sort of decision makers in the company, talk about some pros and cons in different ways of prioritizing things. So I'll probably take the prioritization framework that we have, and I would simplify it a lot more to the needs that you have in your specific team, and start with that. And, you know, just be scrappy. It doesn't have to be this like, you know, custom configured Jira board with like automated notification systems and AI integrations to our documentation platform. That like really not. Like focus on the biggest needs for the teams and focus on how to define what those are. I think that's what I would do.
Cool. Following up on that is, when you are sorting that out and going through all these requests, how do you find the time to remove duplications and provide support for non-issues?
Yeah, so in the beginning, this was very hard because we got so many things right away to work on. But what I will say is, like, over time, it's kind of started to slow down. But yeah, we that's why we have the grooming as well, and this kind of intake meeting to really see, hey, is this really something that is new? Is it something we have? If we already have it, we usually just mark the request as one fix, and we tell them why. And we misunderstood them, they can always like tell us, and we'll open it again. Yeah, like we try to spend maybe 5 minutes per request to do this prioritization and to also get like the bird's eye view of what they want. So any more than that, we try to avoid to move things on quickly.
Okay, perfect. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah.
Cool. So last one.
So.
So do you have any tips for improving the visibility on changes?
Yeah, like sell the system and the changes everywhere you can. I mean, depends on your company, but I mean, for us, we use Slack for everything. So we try to, okay, for example, when anyone joins our company as a designer, we have this automation that we set up in Slack. Anyone can do this. So when they join our design channel, where all the designers are, they will automatically get added to a bunch of our design system channel, and we'll automatically send them this welcome message explaining where they can find things. So that we had to do that once, but now that's kind of working and getting people to know the system. So at least for designers, like, I mean, they should know about the design system. It's also part of the onboarding, by the way. So for our entire design language and a lot of other knowledge, we actually have like a video course that they can take. That's not something I recommend you to do like as a first priority. That's probably the last priority. But yeah, find them where they are. That's what I will say. If you work in Figma, make sure to find them in Figma. If you work in Slack, make sure to find them there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been absolutely amazing. Great content. Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining so late to time.
No worries.
Cool.
All right.